Every city has its rhythm, the daytime hustle, the nightlife energy, and the quiet lull of midnight. But while most of us are asleep, the men and women of law enforcement are wide awake, patrolling neighborhoods, responding to distress calls, and managing chaos. Tonight, we take you into the heart of Nashville, Tennessee, and Albuquerque, New Mexico. Two cities with very different vibes, but the same pulse of human complexity. This isn't just a show about crime. It's a lens into people's lives, the decisions they make, the paths they take, and the consequences that follow. What makes a person run from the police on a stolen moped? What leads someone to flash a knife while wearing a Scottish kilt on a public road? Why would anyone risk everything for a quick hit of crack cocaine? These aren't just questions for the courts. These are moments that tell a deeper story, a story of broken systems, personal trauma, economic desperation, and sometimes just plain foolishness. But it's also a story of resilience, bravery, and a community's attempt to hold itself together. Tonight we dive deep, not just into the events, but the lives behind them. It was just after 6 p.m. when the call came, and a moped had been reported stolen from the parking lot of a grocery store off Greenwood Avenue in East Nashville. The suspect, described as a young male around 14 or 15, wearing a blue t-shirt and denim shorts. The moped, a black, slightly rusted model, was seen weaving dangerously through nearby traffic. Officer Darnell Williams, a 6-year veteran of the Nashville Metro Police Department, had just finished writing up a domestic disturbance report when the dispatch came through. Within minutes, he was back in his cruiser, heading north toward the Greenwood apartments. "When you hear stolen moped, you don't think it's going to become a chase," he said later. But this one went wild. As Officer Williams turned onto Chapel Avenue, he spotted the moped speeding across the intersection, nearly clipping a parked car. Williams flipped on his lights and siren. The teen didn't slow. Instead, he glanced back, then hit the throttle. The chase was on. From that point forward, what was a petty theft became a public safety hazard. The boy darted through backyards, over curbs, and down tight alleys, narrowly missing trash bins, fences, and pedestrians. Body cam footage later showed the adrenaline-pumped pursuit through narrow paths barely wider than a doorway. Williams called in backup northbound on Matthews Place, heading toward H Garden Apartments. He radioed, his voice steady despite the chaos. The suspect drove like someone with nothing to lose, and maybe that was true. Youth and the spiral into crime. Juvenile crime in urban centers like Nashville has long been a growing concern. According to the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation's 2023 report vehicle, thefts involving minors rose by 19% compared to the previous year. Many officers, including Williams, believe this is a symptom of deeper issues: family instability, lack of school engagement, peer pressure, and poverty. Later that night, when the boy was finally apprehended, officers discovered he had no prior record. His name was Jalen. He lived with his grandmother, a retired factory worker, in a small duplex on the edge of the neighborhood. He didn't seem like a bad kid. Officer Williams reflected, just angry, lost. Like he wanted someone to notice him. Jalen's grandmother later told officers that he had been struggling in school. His mother was incarcerated, and his father had never been part of his life. He started hanging around the older boys down the street. She said, "I told him they were trouble, I told him." The psychology of the chase for officers: a chase is more than a test of driving. It's a mental gauntlet. Each second is a decision point. Do you pursue? Do you hold back? What if a bystander's in the way? What if the suspect crashes? We're trained to weigh risk versus reward, constantly said Sergeant Elena Ruiz, a pursuit policy trainer in the Southeast District. A stolen moped isn't worth a life. But if the driver is endangering others, you can't just let them go either. In Jalen's case, the decision to continue pursuit was made because of his erratic driving through densely populated residential areas. Several children were outside playing as he tore through yards and sidewalks. A community on alert. By the time Jalen turned onto Scott Avenue, the chase had drawn a crowd. Neighbors emerged from their homes, some filming with phones, others yelling warnings or encouragement. Police shouted for bystanders to clear the way. "Everybody back up, he's running." Jalen ditched the moped behind an abandoned house and tried to escape on foot. He ran through a side yard and into the arms of Officer Harris, who had flanked him on foot from the opposite street. He froze for half a second, like he was about to keep running, Harris recalled. Then he just dropped to his knees. The arrest was made without incident. Aftermath, redemption, or recidivism. Back at the station, Jalen was booked for felony, evading arrest and possession of stolen property. But for Williams and Harris, the paperwork wasn't the end of the story. I remember looking at that kid and just thinking, what's next for him? Williams said, is this his beginning or his end? In many departments, there are now efforts to route juveniles like Jalen into intervention programs. Youth diversion courts, mentorship initiatives, and family counseling all play a role. But results vary. Without consistent support, many fall back into the cycle. I hope we see him again, Harris said. But not like this. Maybe next time it'll be at a community event or with a diploma in his hand. Real-life example from Chase to Change. Former officer turned mentor Randy Carlisle recalls a similar case from 2019. Kids stole a car, ran from us, crashed into a fire hydrant, but he got into a youth program afterward. Now he's a mechanic, fixes patrol cars actually. These stories are the reason officers stay hopeful. One chase can lead to jail or a second chance. As the sun set that evening in Nashville and the sirens faded, Jalen sat in the back of a squad car silent. He had been heard, and now maybe he could be helped. It's just after noon in downtown Nashville. The summer heat shimmers above the pavement, and tourists fill the sidewalks drawn by music and murals. Then the call comes in, a man on the side of the road wearing a Scottish kilt, allegedly waving a knife and exposing himself to passing cars. When officers Megan Riley and Jordan Salgado arrive, they don't see a threat, they see confusion. A man in his 40s stands calmly beside a lamp's kilt flapping in the breeze. One hand clutching a cheap bottle of red wine, the other waving at traffic. He's sunburned, slightly swaying and humming something that vaguely resembles a country tune. "Sir, do you have any weapons on you?" Riley asks cautiously. "No, ma'am," he answers with a lilt. "Just my voice in the wind." After a pat-down, they discover a folding knife in his bag, alongside a harmonica, a half-eaten bologna sandwich, and a notepad filled with song lyrics. Mental illness in plain sight. The man identifies himself only as Wesley. He says he's a country singer from South Carolina on tour across the South. He's not homeless. He claims he's untethered. When asked about the alleged exposure, he says he was just picking up his harmonica. Maybe someone saw too much. He shrugs. Kilts do that. Wesley's story may seem humorous on the surface, but it raises serious questions about how cities address visible mental illness. Officers Riley and Salgado recognize the signs. Disorganized thinking, mood swings, delusional ambition. He's not violent, not threatening, just strange. According to the National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI, about 1 in 5 adults in the U.S. experience mental illness each year. A significant portion go untreated, particularly those who are homeless or transient. For many of these individuals, police officers become de facto social workers. Half the time, we're not enforcing laws, Officer Salgado later explains. We're managing crises, diffusing situations, trying to help someone survive the day. A songwriter's sadness. Wesley's belongings reveal a deeper layer to his story. Scribbled in the margins of his notepad are phrases like, "Sleeping in silence, mom's last smile, and a knot broken, just floating." Officer Riley, who studied music in college before joining the force, flips through the pages, while Wesley leans on a guardrail, sipping water from a police-issued bottle. "He's got talent," she says softly, "and pain." Many mentally ill individuals channel their trauma through creative outlets, art, poetry, music. But without support, those expressions get lost in noise. Wesley tells them he had a gig once years ago, played at a barbecue joint in Charleston, got paid in ribs and applause. Law enforcement and the limits of power. Technically, Wesley could be arrested, public intoxication, brandishing a weapon, disorderly conduct. But Riley and Salgado see no benefit in booking him. Instead, they contact a mobile crisis unit. In cities like Nashville, these units staffed by social workers and mental health professionals partner with police to provide real-time intervention. It's a model growing in popularity across the U.S., seen as a way to reduce unnecessary incarcerations and get people into care instead of cells. "It's about doing what's right, not just what's legal," Riley says. They sit with Wesley on the curb for nearly 30 minutes. He sings parts of his original songs between sips of water. The lyrics are rambling, but honest lines about losing his brother to heroin, about sleeping under bridges, about dreaming of stages. The crisis team arrives. They approach gently, recognizing the balance between safety and respect. Wesley agrees to ride with them. Only if I can keep my notebook, he insists. You got it, one of the counselors says. Society's eccentric fringe. Not all mental illness looks like violence. Sometimes it's a man in a kilt on a sunny street trying to sing his pain into something beautiful. But society isn't always kind to the eccentric. They're seen as nuisances, punchlines, or worse, threats. Wesley's case is a reminder that not all disorder demands discipline. Sometimes it needs dignity, a seat in the shade, a bottle of water, someone to say, we see you, you matter. Officers Riley and Salgado returned to patrol after Wesley left with the crisis team. They checked his name, no outstanding warrants, no missing persons report, just another man drifting through the cracks. We probably won't see him again, Salgado said, but I hope someone hears his song someday. Real-life reflection, from compassion to connection. Officer Darius Jennings from Albuquerque recalls a similar case. We had a guy who used to stand on the corner wearing a crown made of soda cans. People laughed. Then one day he walked into traffic. Jennings now advocates for more mental health training for officers. We're first responders. But sometimes we're the only responders. In Wesley's case, the response was compassion. And that sometimes is enough. It started as a routine traffic stop on a quiet back street in Albuquerque. Officer Carla Ruiz noticed the black pickup truck swerve slightly across the divider line, hesitate, then jerk back into its lane. Something about the driving was off. She flicked on her lights and pulled the vehicle over near a dimly lit gas station. Two men were inside, a middle-aged driver and a younger passenger who kept looking over his shoulder. License and registration, Ruiz asked. The driver, a gaunt man with bloodshot eyes and trembling hands, handed them over. Did I do something wrong, officer? He asked nervously. Ruiz glanced inside. The dashboard was dusty, but the floor was cluttered. Bits of tinfoil, charred lighters, small baggies, and in the console what looked unmistakably like a glass pipe. From traffic violation to drug crime. What began with a turn signal quickly spiraled. A backup unit arrived. The driver insisted he hadn't done anything illegal. I'm just an alcoholic, he repeated. That's all. No crack, no meth, nothing like that. But the truth was scattered in the floorboards. 7 pipes, 4 razors, burnt, wire mesh, empty baggies, and a broken antenna converted into a makeshift smoking tool. The passenger, meanwhile, remained oddly silent, staring straight ahead. When questioned, he distanced himself. I just needed a ride, he muttered. I don't even know that guy like that. The grip of addiction, drug addiction, who had to ravage communities across America. Albuquerque, like many cities, has seen a surge in crack cocaine, methamphetamine, and fentanyl use. According to the New Mexico Department of Health, opioid overdose deaths rose by 27% in the last 3 years. Crack, while overshadowed by fentanyl, still lurks in corners of the city, cheap, accessible, and instantly addictive. Dr. Lisa Carrington, a substance abuse specialist in the Southwest, explains, people don't start smoking crack because they want to. They start because they're escaping something: trauma, poverty, mental illness. And once it grabs hold, it doesn't let go easily. For many, addiction begins with something small: a party, a friend's offer, a coping mechanism. But over time, the drug rewires the brain. The user needs more, feels less, loses trust, jobs, families. Officer training and the human element. Officer Ruiz had undergone crisis intervention training, a program designed to help officers recognize signs of substance abuse and mental illness. It changes how you see these stops, she later said. You're not just looking for contraband, you're seeing a person in crisis. She noticed the driver's scars, both literal and figurative, a half-faded tattoo of a name, old needle marks on the arm, deep creases around his eyes. You've been clean before, she asked him while waiting for a search warrant. Twice, he admitted. I made it 6 months once. Redemption stories light in the dark. Former user Marvin James now works as a peer counselor in Albuquerque's recovery network. Arrested 5 times for possession in the early 2000s, his turning point came after an overdose in jail. I saw the light, literally, he says. Heart stopped. They brought me back. When I woke up, I said, that's it. I gotta change. Today, Marvin runs workshops inside the same precinct where he was once a frequent visitor. He believes in second chances and third ones, too. Addiction is a disease. You don't yell at someone with cancer. You treat them. Back to the stop, the decision. After searching the vehicle, officers collected the evidence, carefully labeling each item. The passenger was questioned again, this time more thoroughly. A warrant check revealed he had 2 priors for drug possession and a pending court date. He was arrested. The driver, Ruiz, had a choice. Technically, he was in violation. But something about the way he talked, he wanted out. You can hear it when they're done. Instead of jail, she connected him with a detox program. The DA's office agreed to defer charges if he enrolled. Reflection, a crisis, not a crime. Too often drug users are treated as criminals before they're seen as patients. But more departments are beginning to understand incarceration doesn't heal trauma. Recovery does. In Albuquerque's new diversion program, low-level drug offenders can enter treatment in lieu of jail time. Officers like Ruiz are trained to make the call when to book and when to redirect. It doesn't always work, she admits, but when it does, it's everything. Real-life perspective, breaking the cycle. Captain Maurice Allen of Nashville's Vice Division adds, "We can't arrest our way out of addiction. What we can do is intercept it, create an off-ramp, a moment where someone sees a different path." He recalls one case, a mother of 2 caught with crack pipes in a motel. She got help, stayed clean, and now speaks at high schools. She tells kids 1 rock can cost you everything, but you can still come back. Closing the scene, the pickup was towed. The passenger booked. The driver escorted to a detox center with a promise not of forgiveness, but of a fresh start. Ruiz ended her shift as the sun dipped below the skyline. In her notebook, she scribbled, 2 arrests, 1 chance. It's not always easy to tell which will stick. But as every good officer knows, you don't give up on people. Not when they still have a song left to sing. It began with a call that dispatchers in Albuquerque know all too well. Domestic disturbance, potential weapon involved, suspect fled the scene. It was 10:43 p.m. when officers Maya Thornton and Luis Gomez were dispatched to a low-income apartment complex just off San Mateo Boulevard. The caller, frantic and crying, reported that her brother had been stabbed by her boyfriend during an argument that spiraled into violence. When officers arrived, the scene was chaotic. The victim, a man in his mid-30s named Andre, was slumped on the sidewalk, bleeding from the abdomen. A neighbor was pressing a towel against the wound. The sister, Rhonda, stood nearby, shaking and sobbing. "He just snapped," she repeated. "He just snapped." How fast it happens. The argument started over something trivial, a text message, a misinterpreted glance. But words escalated, and when emotions burn, hot logic melts away. The boyfriend, Marcus, reportedly pushed Rhonda, prompting Andre to step in. That's when the knife came out. It all happened so fast, Rhonda told officers. 1 second they were yelling, the next, he was swinging. The knife, later recovered from a trash can 2 blocks away, had a 6-inch blade, the kind commonly used in kitchens. It was stained with blood. Andre was rushed to the hospital. Officers set up a perimeter and began canvassing the neighborhood. The broader crisis of domestic violence. Domestic violence is an epidemic, according to the National Coalition. Against domestic violence, 1 in 4 women and 1 in 9 men will experience severe intimate partner violence in their lifetime. In New Mexico alone, domestic violence accounted for over 17,000 calls to law enforcement last year. It's one of the most volatile situations we respond to, Officer Thornton later explained, because love and violence mix in unpredictable ways. Officers are trained to separate parties, assess injuries, and de-escalate. But often by the time they arrive, the damage is already done. Inside the home. The apartment where the altercation occurred told a silent story. Dishes half washed, a broken picture frame, a mattress on the floor, a child's toy in the corner. Neighbors said they'd heard fights before, screaming, crying. But like so many cases of domestic violence, it remained unreported until it turned bloody. It's hard to explain. Rhonda said, "I loved him, but he changed, or maybe I just didn't want to see it." A survivor's voice. In the weeks following the incident, Rhonda gave a statement to local advocates. Her story became part of a larger campaign called Silent. No more, aimed at encouraging victims to speak up. "I always thought it was my fault," she said, "that if I just did things right, he wouldn't get angry. But now I know better." Her brother survived after surgery. The physical wounds would heal. The emotional ones hers. Her brother's, even her child's, would take far longer. The hunt for Marcus. Marcus, the suspect, fled the scene in a teal-colored Sunbird. Officers located the car 45 minutes later, parked behind an abandoned gas station. He was inside, slouched in the back seat, knife wounds on his own hands. When taken into custody, he was largely silent. He barely said a word, Officer Gomez recalled. Like he knew it was over, he was booked for aggravated battery with a deadly weapon, domestic violence, and resisting arrest. Legal path forward. The legal process for domestic violence cases is complex. Victims often recant either out of fear or misplaced guilt. Prosecutors work closely with victim advocates to ensure safety and support. In this case, Rhonda agreed to cooperate. "I won't let him scare me into silence again," she told the DA. Marcus faced multiple charges. His prior record assault in another state compounded the severity. Bail was denied, preventing the next one. While punishment is essential, prevention is even more critical. Programs like Safe Haven in Albuquerque offer counseling, emergency housing, and legal aid for survivors. Detective Alana Priest, who specializes in family violence cases, says the key is early intervention. It starts with one push, one threat, then it becomes routine until someone ends up in an ambulance. Officers like Thornton and Gomez now carry brochures and emergency contact cards, hoping that small acts of outreach can prevent future stabbings, bruises, and scars. Real-life example from victim to advocate. Angela Mendez, once a victim of domestic violence, now works as a crisis counselor. "I used to hide my bruises," she says. "Now I help others see their strength." Her turning point came when an officer handed her a card and said, "You don't have to live like this." It changed her life. Closing the chapter. As the lights dimmed on the street that night and crime scene tape fluttered in the wind, a familiar truth settled in the most dangerous place. For many is not the street, but home for officers Thornton and Gomez. "It was a painful reminder. You train for gunfire," Gomez said, "but nothing prepares you for the silence that follows a scream." And for Rhonda and Andre, healing would take time. But with support, safety, and courage, they had a path forward. We've seen a lot tonight. A young teen evading arrest on a moped, a man in a kilt who may just need help, a car full of drug paraphernalia, a stabbing rooted in a family argument. These are more than just events. They're threads in the fabric of our communities. These stories remind us that police work is not black and white. It's a job soaked in moral gray. Officers aren't just enforcers. They're social workers, mental health responders, protectors, and occasionally peacekeepers in the truest sense. Whether you admire or question law enforcement, one thing is certain: their nights are never quiet. In Nashville and Albuquerque, we watched as officers faced everything from chaotic pursuits to fragile mental health breakdowns. They made decisions in the moment, balancing safety, legality, and humanity. Not every call ended in handcuffs. Some ended in counseling, others in reflection, and a few in second chances. In Jalen's story, the teenager on the stolen moped, we saw a reflection of the youth left behind by broken systems. He wasn't a hardened criminal. He was a boy caught in a moment of desperation. And thanks to officers who saw beyond the badge, he may get another shot at writing a different story. With Wesley, the man in the kilt, the issue wasn't crime. It was compassion. Mental illness doesn't always shout. Sometimes it sings. The choice to help instead of jail may have been the kindest act he'd received in months or years. The traffic stop laced with crack pipes revealed a crisis we too often ignore. Substance abuse is a public health issue. Police alone can't fix it, but their actions, like Ruiz's, can be the first step in recovery. Arrests are sometimes inevitable, but options for hope must be built into the process. Then there's domestic violence, a scourge hidden behind closed doors. Officers Thornton and Gomez stepped into a world of trauma that had simmered for years. It's a reminder that the most dangerous place for many is not the street, but home. And in that space, law enforcement must tread carefully because they're often the only line between survival and tragedy. We must not forget that change doesn't come from punishment alone. It comes from understanding every suspect was once a child. Every officer has a breaking point. Every call is a chance to do better. If there's a takeaway from all of this, it's that empathy and enforcement are not opposites. They are partners in the pursuit of justice. Good policing requires both. As we close this chapter, we are left with questions. What does it mean to serve and protect? Who are we really protecting? And are we listening to the stories behind the sirens? Let these stories linger. Let them provoke thought, conversation, and maybe even action. Because behind every flashing light, there's a human story. And every one of them matters.